Hello, hello, hello. Happy Thursday, y'all. And welcome to this episode of Bankroll Your Brains Thursdays. I'm Nicole Roberts-Jones, your Bankroll Your Brains expert, and you guys need to know, already from the pre-show, which is just 5 minutes, I'm already on fire from what I know this guest is going to share with you. But before I introduce her, come on in, tell us name, tell us where you're from. Now, as you know, in these segments, it's my goal to do one of two or three things. One is to really make sure you understand what your brilliance is, your purpose, the one thing God created you to do and or be in this world. The second is the value tied to it, which encompasses so many things. We're going to get into that today. And then the third is, how do you create multiple streams of revenue from it? I need you to understand, when I'm talking revenue, I'm talking profit. The word profit means gain. So ultimately, it's your purpose to be gain for the people that need you. And God gives gain back to you so you can continue to expand and spread and do and serve more. And so with that said, y'all come on in and say hello. Listen, as my grandmother would say, don't come in this house and not speak. So you in my virtual house today, you guys know I say this line every week. So come on in. And as Dr. Keisha shares, if you have questions, ask. If she steps on your toes, say ouch. If she's walking down your street, tell her. Because again, I bring these guests on to give you value. And so today, our conversation, hey, Marnice in Texas, and Mary, tell us where you are. Our conversation today is really a conversation that I think so many Black folks are scared to have, but not Dr. Keisha. So let me introduce her to you. And you know what, Dr. Keisha, I don't ever say your last name, so I know I'm getting ready to mess it up. And I got so into talking to her, I forgot to ask her. So please correct me when I bring you on. Y'all know I'm transparent. But I also talked in English class, so I'm hooked on phonics. So anyway, Dr. Keisha Siriboe? You'll correct me. She's shaking her head no. Is a faith-based entrepreneur and coach who uses her business to add value to the lives of others. I'm going to tell y'all right now, she's going to add value to your life. She is a globally respected scholar with several academic awards to her name. She's the first African American to graduate with an MA degree from Beijing Normal University in Beijing, China, of course, and the first African American to obtain a PhD from the University of Hong Kong. Now, if that ain't enough to make you go, what? Right. Now, I can go on and on. Dr. Keisha's been featured on NPR's Life Kit, done several international TED Talks, and worked at the highest levels of education policy internationally. But what she's going to share with you today will shift everything for you. Y'all ready? You got a pen? Hey, Dolores in Buffalo, and Mary in Oklahoma, and Tina in Houston, and Pam in Nashville, and Eleanor in North Carolina. So, y'all ready? Grab your pen, and let's welcome Dr. Keisha to today's episode. Hey, girl.
Girl, if you can't bring somebody out, oh my goodness, I felt all that energy. And I'm so excited about this conversation. Like, we got somebody.
Say your last name, girl, first.
Siriboe.
Siriboe, girl, I would have never got that bar.
At all. No, ma'am. But I love you anyway. You saw me shaking my head. No, that's why I go by Dr. Keisha or Doc Keisha.
Sounds so much better. But anyway, listen. So you guys need to know, I'm going to tell you right out of the gate. So our segment is supposed to be today. Okay, supposed to be mountains and mustard seeds. What does faith look like in the third year of the pandemic? But as we all know, in the last few days and weeks, we've dealt with Buffalo things, all the stuff that has happened in Buffalo. We've dealt with all the things that happened in Texas that we just, and all the kids, and oh my goodness. And so we started having a conversation, and I really want you guys to get this and buckle your seatbelt, because some of y'all are not ready for this, but I need you to understand this is the very thing many of you need, and why your business and or life isn't working. So let's talk about trauma, and you gave me such a great explanation. We were just chit-chatting, by the way. So
Mm-hmm.
talk to me about where you feel like we are as a people and how these events we're overlooking
Mm.
and discounting the reaction they're having to us individually.
Yeah. So when we think about the impact of trauma, and I'm just going to limit it to what we've seen in the last, it hasn't even been 2 full weeks. So think about the lives that were stolen from us by an act of domestic terrorism by a white supremacist, because language is important. We're going to call that what it is. We saw
Mhm.
that happen in Buffalo. And now we're dealing with the tragedy of what happened in Uvalde, Texas. That
Yeah.
is a lot. That is a lot. And trauma is understood. It's not just anything that happened to you that was like really profound in childhood or really, specific deep moments. Trauma is anything the body recognizes happening too fast, too much, too soon. So
Mm.
any emotion that is too fast, too strong, too much, happening too soon, right? That was definitely Buffalo. And it's further compounded by what we're seeing play out in Texas. Now, when it comes to race, this is why racial trauma, it needs to have its own and does have its own understanding. But we as people of color, I represent as a wonderfully Black woman. And we need to understand that it impacts us on an even deeper level, because a lot of times we deal with so many slights. If you're a professional, an entrepreneur, someone starting out a business, you carry racial trauma that followed you from your time working for others. Or if you're still working from others, at some point in your career, you probably had an experience where you experienced a microaggression or racial aggression. It may not have been micro, it might have been outright in your face. And you
Mhm.
went and reported it and nothing happened. How you processed it was probably either you went to therapy and you may have dealt with it, good for you, but most often people just push it down.
And let's talk about
And
this. Like, we're going to go all the way in. And I want you to remember your and from right there where I'm pausing. Because she said either
mm,
you went to therapy and dealt with it. Let me say this for a minute. Black folk in therapy. Because many of us think
yeah,
only you have to be crazy to go to therapy. Listen, let me tell you right now, I've been in therapy. I have my therapist is on speed dial. Okay. Number one.
still in it.
Number two, you have to be crazy not to go. Because as Dr. Keisha's sharing, what happens is, you guys, when you have one thing that happened to you when you were 5, and I'm talking about me, you have one thing that happened to you when you were 5 and you didn't deal with it, then what happens when you're 25 gets pushed on top of that, and then 35 gets pushed on top of that, and then 37, and some of that is things people have done to you. Some of that is by being Black in America.
Sis, let's go in, because now when you bring in early childhood, you bring it in my research area where I'm rooted and grounded for the last 25 years. When you think about early childhood trauma, age of 5, the thing is your brain rationalizes that at the age of a 5-year-old. And most oftentimes, and we've seen this in past studies, when a child doesn't understand something, they come up with an explanation that makes sense to them. Most often, they make it their fault.
Right. Oh, so can I
They
tell y'all? Listen, those I gotta tell y'all. So you get she's on my street, so I'm naming it out loud. So when I was 5, y'all see I'm light skinned, right? So everybody called me white girl. And some of you guys have heard this story. I've told this story. And I finally, when I was 5, felt like I had an epiphany. And I got to tell this because you totally just told my story and didn't even know it. So, and by the way, it's all our stories. So I came home. I was like, oh my goodness, I had an epiphany. This was 1975, y'all.
Mm,
So I looked like my doll, I thought. So I said, Mommy, I'm white like my doll. Now, my
mm.
mother's a light skinned African American woman. My father was light skinned, God rest his soul. My I can go on and on. Now, I'm sure somewhere in my family tree there's some other, but that's not the point. I'm Black that I know of. Okay. So my mother jumped up, and I remember she was in the bathtub, pulled me up. Now, when you're 5,
Yes.
I'm not thinking she's full of pride pulling me up. I'm thinking I'm in trouble.
Yes.
And so I never told another soul that I never felt Black enough, which then soon translated into not enough, period. So
Mm-hmm.
who I became from 5 into 26 when I got a therapist. Y'all, we don't have a long enough show for me to tell you the things I did and the people I dated and the decisions I made because I didn't feel like I was enough. So I'm sharing that because I want you guys to have a real example of what Dr. Keisha's talking about, because that exactly was me. And many of you have dealt with stuff and you've learned to push it back. So you forgot about it, but it's still there.
And one of the ways it's still there that I'm working on right now, trauma happens in your mind, yes, but trauma is felt most powerfully, particularly racial trauma, in our bodies. In our bodies. And what we don't often have is the psychological immune system to protect our minds, let alone understand the techniques to regulate our nervous system. The term is evocative cues. So when your senses, what you see, what you smell, what you hear, what you experience, is brought to your brain, I'm not going to get too technical, but when it's brought to your brain, the lowest form of your brain, that part of your brain stem, it has, think of it as the body's janitor. Like it's its job to just regulate the body, make sure everything's okay. When that signal happens, its job is either fight, run, or freeze, or rest when it's feeling safe. So when that, say racism happened, Buffalo happened. In that moment, the janitor, for people, depending on what you've taught it to do, how you train that janitor, how you treated that janitor, it was like, nope, we're not dealing with that, period. And so it just shuts the body down. You either become numb, or you avoid it, or it feels like you can't handle it. And it does not allow it. The janitor has the keys to your mind. And so the janitor says, we're not dealing with this. It doesn't make it to the highest part of your brain, your cognitive thinking, the part that does feelings, the rational part of you, the wise part. It'll shut it all down. And so for a lot of people, what you're seeing this as, have you been going to grocery stores? Have you been physically walking in the grocery stores? If you're faced with a decision where you need to go to a grocery store, is your knee-jerk reaction, I'm gonna order, I'm gonna Instacart, I'm gonna do this, that, and the third, because right? And that's a learned cue. Now, you're building up your psychological immune system. That's where restorative practices come in. Breath work. A lot of what I've been putting online right now teaches you how to breathe.
Wait. You're going all the way in. Wait. So let's go back. Because look, she's over here, and some of us are down here, including me. So psychological immune system. And I do want you to talk about the work. But before we get there, because this is so deep, you guys, when you said that, it made me think of, even with COVID, even with catching a cold, the reason you catch a cold usually is because your immune system is compromised. Or the reason some people got COVID and some didn't, now the people that were exposed to it, let me say, and some got it worse before we had the shot, is all about the immune system. I need y'all to get this. And some people have pre-existing conditions, which makes your immune system more compromised. So if you've gone through things, so that means that if you've gone through things in life, your psychological immune system is compromised, but you don't even know it.
Yes, and I believe in citing a sister. So let me give credit where credit is due. That is a research term that comes from Dr. Gail Parker. That is a beautiful Black woman who practices restorative yoga for dealing with racial stress and trauma. I'm that kind of academic.
Okay.
Now, coming back to what we're talking about, your psychological immune system. Go back to what you shared in childhood. Your mother has that strong reaction because what you've done has triggered something in her. And that's a great example of her brain janitor. Because had she been thinking at a higher level, she would have never responded like that. But it's the janitor all their job is to protect the body. Like when you look at the research, they compare that part of your brain. They call it the lizard brain, right? Because it's similar to the brain you see in lizards or birds. But it's that automatic knee-jerk reaction. And this happens in a fourth of a second. It's so swift, right? But when we develop our psychological immune system through the things I teach, through the work I do, we start to retrain our body to feel these emotions, not react, not become numb, not shut down, just allow it to process. Had I had the honor of knowing your family back then, that would have been something I would have shared with you all. So you would have had a strong psychological immune system that allows you to feel things, feel it, feel the grief, feel it, but it does not impair you. I can still walk into a grocery store. I can celebrate, like on my YouTube channel right now, I did 10-minute joyful celebrations celebrating the lives that were stolen from us. And listen, we lost some elders, but baby, they lived some lives, right? But then I also highlighted Miss Roberta Jewelry, who was only 32 when she passed. That was trauma. That was tragic.
Yeah.
Right? But the ability to feel that, but not feel personally attacked by it. That's what I'm working on. That's what I teach. That's what I do. That's the value I want our community to have. And now, as we look at what happened in Texas, now here's the thing. This is what people aren't talking about. There is built-in racial trauma just in the way in which we're seeing the differences in coverage for what happened in Buffalo versus what happened in Uvalde. Now, this is not at all the trauma Olympics, but it's very real for people who have already experienced not being seen, not being heard, not being respected. Their concerns, entrepreneurs, this is you. You speak up, nothing happens. Something bad happens to you. Something bad has happened to somebody else. You expect the powers to be to support you, and they don't. But then somebody else has something happen, and the world rushes in. You're processing that.
So good.
This is where that psychological immune system is so important. This is where breath work is so important. This is why I'm doing my free event on Friday, and that recording will be available. So if you can't make it, I'm going to put that online because it is important to me. I take offense. And my whole role in this work started with Trayvon Martin. I was in Hong Kong when Trayvon Martin happened. And it was enough to where I wanted to leave Hong Kong, not even finish my PhD and get involved in social justice work, come back to the States and hit the ground running. Wisdom found me. People who cared about me said, Keisha, you could go and you be impactful. But if you graduate and you get these skills, you will be far more impactful. If you leave now, you'll just be a soldier in this war. But if you finish, you'll be a general. Well, I'm a general now. And this is my war cry. The work I'm doing on processing racial trauma, and I mean this. That's why, as well paid as I am, and I do bankroll my brilliance. Shout out to what you're talking about. But I'm able to bankroll my brilliance because I process my psychological trauma and I release the trauma that's in my body. So when I see $1 million idea come, I recognize and I don't second guess myself because of what some racists told me, because they were trying to make sure I felt small. Because they were intimidated by my brilliance and didn't want me coming for their throat.
Ooh, you see, she going in, y'all. Listen, I only interrupted her because she made mention of an event she's doing on Friday. We'll tell you guys about that, and I'll put the link up toward the end. So don't stay to the end so you get the information. 1, 2. Let's talk about this for a minute, because no matter if you're watching and you started your business, or you want to start a business and you're still working a 9 to 5, I need you to get this. Everywhere you go, there you are. I'm gonna say it one more time. Everywhere you go. So whether you're picking your kids up from school, whether you're working at your job, whether you're starting your business, whether you're talking to your mate, whether you're hanging out with your girlfriends, you bring you to that. So I need you to get that your business, your career can never outgrow you. So if you think this does not apply to you, I bet you're probably dealing with it right now and you are in something called denial. So I need you guys to get this. And so, Dr. Keisha, if you had to give people, the first steps they must take. Now, we know the first step is a hire a counselor. We know that. But really getting clear on where they are in the traumatic experience and how to move it forward. And I love that she calls this from mountains to mustard seeds.
Yes.
So that trauma is a big mountain that some of y'all keep bumping up against, and you acting like it's not there. And you keep bumping up against it. It's like, hello, can you see that you bumping up against this mountain and do something about it? So what would you recommend are some of the steps they must take to begin to move that mountain out of their way?
Yes. And I want to quickly highlight what you mentioned for people who may hear this and you don't see it. Not only, can we say you're in denial, but you're probably in your defense because so much has happened in your past. And if I knew you, I'd say, what happened to you? Like if we were having a conversation and you were like, no, that's not me. That has nothing to do with me. And I see that you represent as a person of color. I would ask you, what happened to you? Because so much has happened that this is the defense system you have put up so that you could do the things you need to do. So I want you to understand there is love, compassion, and the ability to see you in this work. Because what you have developed are defense mechanisms because you've been constantly attacked. And here are some of the things you can do right now in the moment. It's one of my favorite deep breathing exercises. I call it 5-7-8.
Mm.
And one of the first people I heard do this, shout out because I love the site, was Torrey Roberts, the
Mm.
husband of Sarah Jakes Roberts,
Mhm.
right? But this is also supported in the research. Deep breathing, some of the best things you can do, because that's how you talk to the janitor.
Mhm.
I taught you about the janitor. This is how you talk to him. You breathe in the moment. 5, 7, 8. So 5 is the number of grace. 7 is the number of completion. 8 is the number of new beginnings. You want to
Mm.
breathe in deeply through the nose for 5 seconds. And when you're breathing in, I want you to give yourself grace in that moment to do this exercise. Doesn't matter where you at. Give yourself the grace that says, I'm important and I need to listen to my body and I don't care what's going on. I'm going to give myself grace. Let everybody know I'm taking some grace. Step back and I'm going to do some deep breath work.
Mm.
7 is the number of completion. When you breathe in for 5 seconds, I want you to hold your breath for 7 seconds. While you're holding that breath, gather up everything that's not serving you in that moment. Fear, anxiety, depression, that is not serving me in this moment. Pull it all up. Pull it from your body, this tension. Pull it from your mind. All those negative thoughts, pull it. And in that 8 seconds, when you're exhaling, let it go. Breathe it out. Breathe it out for 8 seconds. Breathe it out through the mouth for 8 seconds. And then when you take that new breath, because 8 is the number of new beginnings. If you're a person of faith, understand who you serve and breathe in a new experience. Breathe in a new identity. If you're someone who does not identify with faith, take in a new step and see this as a beginning of a new moment. 5, 7, 8.
That's so good.
Grace, the number of completion, the number of new beginnings. And you take, I typically ask people to take at least 4 of those breath cycles. Take more if you need to. But take the moment you feel it, in the moment, because I specialize in processing trauma in the moment, processing trauma in the body in the moment. So if you're walking past a grocery store, if you have children, God, if you have children and you're worried about sending them to school, teach this to them. I specialize in early childhood. I use literacy and reading aloud to teach people how to have these conversations with young children. When Dr. Nicole said she brings guests that add value, she was not playing, because not only am I certified in this work around racial trauma, but I am thoroughly grounded in the research as a doctor of education from an international and a national perspective. And at my core, I am a Black woman who is a first-generation college student who comes from my own traumatic background. Right. So when I tell you what I'm telling you what I know, what I studied, and what I believe. And if you're a part of the church culture, let me tell you, them church hymns, that's one of the best things you can do. Right now, if you're familiar with church culture, the hymn, I Need Thee. Sing the hymn, I Need Thee. The moment you start to feel this trauma rising up, this stress rising up, as you walk through what happened in Uvalde, as you're exposed, whether you're reading it or it's just thrown in your face, sing that hymn. And if you really want to get into the science of this, wrap yourself, get in this posture, and rock as you sing that hymn to yourself.
And let me just say this, because I want to talk about your event next that's coming up tomorrow. But let me say this: what she has given you is such a powerful tool, and I've done this and didn't even realize that this was called something. So I want you guys. So who I used to be. So I'm from South Central LA. Okay. So I used to be. Let me tell you how good I could cuss you out. Okay.
Yeah.
So when my neighborhood had told me, the label it presented to me was to be the angry Black woman we hear. So anytime anything bumped up against my trauma, you got the cuss out that you ain't never seen me do. You will never see me do ever again. And so I realized when I got a counselor, and she never told me to do this, but subconsciously, I guess God told me to do this because I didn't know it was called this. But anytime I feel a great emotion now, I stop long enough to process what I'm feeling. So then I can choose the reaction and my emotion doesn't choose it. So what I realize I do is I take a deep breath and I'm taking in the moment and I'm processing what's coming up for me and the negative emotions that are up for me and what that's bumping up against. Because whoever's doing this thing, it's not their fault they're bumping. It's my fault I haven't dealt with it. So I want you guys to get this. So my girlfriend has known me since the ninth grade. We were somewhere one day. This is funny. I just told you I could cuss you out and nobody knows this. My husband doesn't even know this version of me. So he laughs when I tell him. You don't know her. So, and when I'm silent, my friends know, ooh, that she's here. I'm like, yes, but I'm being silent because you don't deserve who I used to be. So I'm breathing and I'm processing. And I'll sit there and I won't say a word. I'll be looking dead at you though, but I won't say a word because I'm processing, right? So I learned that because, and my girlfriend has known me since the ninth grade. This is a funny story. So we were driving somewhere in our 30s, and I was needed to go to the car wash. So we get to the car wash, y'all, and this man is zipping and doing and trying to get in front of me. I don't do extra, but I end up in front of him. So he gets out of the car. He knocks on my window, and my girlfriend goes, "Uh oh," because she knows who I used to be. So Nicole, the old Nicole, would get out of the car. Okay, my little self, like I could do something anyway. So my old self would get out of the car and be ready to fight. Pretty much, I rolled the window down. I looked at him. He was cussing me out. I just sat silent, let him finish. I said, "We're both gonna get our car washed today," and I rolled my window up. My girlfriend said, "Who are you? Who are you? What
Mm.
you do with my friend?" She said, "Whatever you did, I need to learn that." Because she said, "Girl, I've never in my life seen somebody transform in front of me." She was blown away. And I'm only sharing that with you because if it was possible for me, again, if you've ever seen, if you guys saw Boys in the Hood, Regina King's character with the braids, y'all remember her? She used to be a hot mess because that was me pretty much. I was a hot
Can I
mess.
share?
Mhm.
Let me share with you what you have done. Let me answer that question for people like, how did you do it? What did you do? You have built up your psychological immune system. You
Mm.
have, in that time when you're processing that silence, when you're looking at that person, but you're not saying anything, you're talking to your janitor
Ooh.
and you're telling your nervous system, we are safe in this
Mm.
moment. We are
Mm.
in control in this moment. This moment does not have control over us. That is what is so beautiful. Like, that's why I start with teaching you the deep breathing techniques. And then I
Mhm.
start teaching you the language and all of the ways in which you begin to talk to yourself. When you
That's so
do
good.
that, your janitor believes you
Mm.
and says, okay, we all right. And then they allow that message to reach the higher parts of your brain, the decision-making part of your brain, the cognitive thinking part of your brain that can then roll down the window and say, da 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 da
Totally.
da da da.
And you know what?
Versus
Too,
the Jason's lyric part of you that would read people right then and there, because the janitor was like, we are not safe. You got to fight. You got to defend yourself. And so when it did send the signal back up to the brain, it had that message that said, we're under attack. So your higher thinking part said, okay, let's go. And here come them skills.
right, right. And the thing that is interesting too is even as you were talking, what just dropped in my spirit is when you first learned this technique. Think about when you have a new job. So the janitor is new at a new job, so it's not easy. So the first few times when I learned a new skill, I still was cussing people out. But then I go, oh, I can't believe I did that. So I process how I allowed my. So I want you guys to get this. It's not an overnight thing, but it's worth
No.
the journey. And so now, Dr. Keisha, I want you to share with them how you can support them in their journey. One of the things she's doing is a free event. So whether you're watching this
Yes.
live or watching
Yes.
the replay, so tell them about the live event tomorrow. But those of you that are watching the replay, the replay will be available as well. So,
Yes. And
Keisha.
in this moment, I'm speaking directly to you, the audience. I am hosting a free, caring conversation to help anybody who needs support process the racial trauma that has been thrown on our bodies. And it hasn't even been 2 weeks yet. We're dealing with compounded things. And so the link below, just type that in together. And that's why I call it Together We Can. Together we can process this. In this space, it's 60 minutes with a live Q&A. 45 minutes, I'm going to teach you some more tools on how to process trauma in the body in the moment. I'm going to give you some deeper understandings so you recognize what you're experiencing. And most importantly, I'm going to share with you some wisdom on how to navigate the weaponization of social media. Because when these events happen, we're getting all this stuff thrown at us. Your timelines, your TV, all of this. And so you're constantly having to figure out how to, it's like you're playing dodgeball every time you touch your phone or you look at social media. And all of that is trying to connect to past events. Like I said, those evocative cues. So if you want to know more, just come to the event and you can see, I love to geek out on this, but I'll save all that for Friday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Recording will be available if you can't make the live event. It will be up on my YouTube channel at Dr. Keisha Cares. Follow me on social media. I also post a lot of other tips, 60-second self-care tips. Been posting it since Buffalo. So there's plenty of things for you right now in this moment, right now, to
Mhm.
support you.
So good, so good. And listen, your geek out is our blessing. So thank you for all you do. Thank you for pouring in. Thank you for being committed
Mhm.
that we would get our janitor in check, that we will get our psychological immune system in order so that we can go about doing this thing that we're meant to do in this world. So, Dr. Keisha, you're a blessing. So I appreciate you,
Thank
girl.
you.
I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
for coming today. So with that, y'all, woo, that I mean, I have a page of notes. So if you don't have any notes, here's I'm gonna ask you to do two things today. Number one, click below. You have to share this because there are people in your tribe. There's somebody that is dealing with this and is depressed in this moment. And this may be you. That needs this information that you don't know he or she is depressed because as Black folks, we don't tell people we're supposed to be strong and get over it. Yeah, no, we're not. So make sure everybody in your community has this insight that Dr. Keisha shared. So all you gotta do is click the button below and say share and say this is something you need to watch or whatever way you want to say that. That's number one. Number two, below write the value you got out of our conversation today. And then number three, if you don't do nothing else, get your butt in a seat tomorrow at 6 p.m. I get that you may have something already pre-scheduled. So if you can't join live, then follow her in social media. Go over to her YouTube channel and subscribe to her channel against Dr. Keisha Cares so that you can see the replay. All right. So with that, that was our episode for today. That was a heavy hitter, right? It was good stuff, right? Uh, Frank said, I need this will be discussed with my friends and family. Yes, I appreciate you, Frank. And Marvin said, yes, we need that. And Dolores said, yes, I need thee. All right. And Maurice says, I have a plaque by my bed that says, just breathe. Yes. And I can go on and on. I'm so glad you guys got value. So thank you for joining us for today's episode. As always, we're here every Thursday to pour more and more into you. All right. So until the next time, have a phenomenal day and realize that your brilliance has value. So take your time and invest in you so you can be a blessing to this world. Bye, y'all.